Yeah.
Yeah.
We like to keep it spicy.
Yeah.
Don't worry about offending anyone. Just let us know.
No,
I called babies ugly last week, so you can't be worse than me.
My unpopular opinion. So this might not be unpopular to some of your listeners, but it's unpopular in my world. Is that just about every single disease that you have is caused by inflammation, and if we reverse the inflammation, we'll fix the disease.
Well, I'm glad you're here because I'm pretty sure my CRP is like really related.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure my like labs are
out. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love this. And this is why we want to bring you on today, because I think there's so many angles that we can talk about. And a lot of this, you know, we were just talking off the clock about this, is I think a lot of things that we may be missing in Western perspective. And so let's give some context to the listeners. Let's go back. How did you get into all of this integrative medicine? Who are you? Yeah, let's
Who
get
am
on
I?
deep.
Yeah. just got on here. Some lady with short hair. What the heck? Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story of how I got here super quick, but I think in that story, many of your listeners will be like, oh my God, this is for me. So I'm a nurse practitioner. I opened up my own practice called EG Healthcare, primary care, conventional medicine, pediatric, adult, geriatric. It's awesome. Take care of the community. Everything's wonderful. And then I had all these patients who would come in and say, hey, I don't feel good. And I would do the labs that I was taught to do in NP school, and everything was fine. So I would say, you're good. I'll see you next year. You're fine. Right. And I never realized how disempowering that is, because I really, truly thought everything was fine. And then it hit home. And I think that is what I discovered in the journey, that any provider that comes to functional or integrative medicine, they themselves are either sick or they're searching for an answer for a loved one. So my wife has 2 autoimmune issues. Her first is something called PMLE, which basically is an allergy to the sun. So we lived like vampires for a while. And so we accommodated, like many of your listeners, the first diagnosis, the first pill, you're like, whatever, I'm strong, I'll get through it. And you just accommodate. You don't necessarily look for answers right away. But then she developed a second autoimmune, and I'll explain that, why that happens in a little bit, which was psoriasis, which is severe psoriasis on her hands and her feet. So she couldn't button her clothes. She couldn't walk for a long time. And that second diagnosis pushed us to search. And many of your listeners would also be like, yes, it was the second thing, or the second ache and pain. I just couldn't take it anymore. So this is years ago, right? Before podcasts, before Zoom. So finding information was a little bit more difficult. I'm old. I'm 50. I'm like ancient. Okay.
First of all, you do not look 50.
Yeah.
I never would have pegged you for 50.
You don't drop the skincare routine.
Whatever you're
before the
doing
end of this episode, I will cry.
It's literally Pond's.
Oh,
Promise.
love that for you.
It's Pond's. It's Pond's cream from CVS.
Okay,
And just a lot of water. So,
and caffeine.
So, oh my God, I lost my chain of thought. Anyway, that was awesome. Thank you for that comment.
Okay, wait.
So this is in the ancient days, right? Before all this. So someone told us about functional medicine, and like serious eye roll, because like, this is not going to work, but we had nothing to lose. And then we went to this functional medicine guy, and he had the audacity to suggest that our issues have to do with nutrition, right? We had no idea that anything like that is possible, because in conventional medicine, your nutrition goes like this. If you have diabetes, don't eat carbs. If you have hypertension, low sodium. That's it. That's the end of the nutrition talk. Right. So we were like, okay, let's just go on this diet, because what the hell? Am I allowed to curse? I'm not sure. So
yes, you fucking can.
Okay, good. We're like, we have nothing to fucking lose.
Bring it, girl. Bring all this up.
Thank you.
Fucking
oh, good.
Yes.
Good. Awesome. So I'm in the right element.
You are.
So we tried it, and it fucking worked. Okay, her hands cleared up. She was able to go out in the sun. Our lives completely transformed. So I started bringing it back to my practice slowly, one patient at a time, kind of dabbling in it, and it just kept working. So I went back to school, got the PhD. That's why it's Dr. Lamandre, even though I'm an NP. Got the PhD in integrative medicine, and then I created the new method, and it's called the new method, and it's spelled with a K, because you always knew there was a better way. And this is what the patients say. Many of your listeners will say, I know something's wrong. I know there's a better way to manage this. They know. And that's why I call it the new method, because my patients know. And the problem is that conventional medicine kind of drops the ball. And before I hand it back to you, I just want to say this. Conventional medicine, and I love conventional medicine, I'm not against it in any way. It is designed to find sickness. If you're sick, you run a lab, you get sick, you get treated. It's great. It's awesome. We need that. But if you're not sick, but you're not well, there's no room for you. There's no room for unwellness in conventional medicine.
Oh
and so many of your listeners, because they're also younger, are in the state of unwellness, but not quite in the state of disease. And that is something that conventional medicine has no room for. And then if you already have a disease, there is no room for options outside of medication.
Oh my God.
I mean, I feel like that's the state I live in. Well, I'm like super anemic. I feel like I'm always just like riding this fine line of like, I'm not sick, but I'm not well.
Right. Actually,
well, that's different because you actually have a pathology. Anemia is a pathology.
Yes.
Like
True.
Fix that, right?
Kind of.
So it's so crazy that you bring this up because so when I was in kindergarten, we're going back to young Tori days. I was going through, kindergarten, and all of a sudden one day, I was sent to the school nurse because I had broken out in hives, right? All these things. Long story, fast forward short, this kept happening, had no idea why. And I was allergic to the sun. And I've literally never heard anybody else ever talk about this. And I haven't talked about it.
No, my mom. I just, honestly, while you were telling your story about your wife, I like literally Googled it and I texted the link to my mom because I've been trying to get her like labs for like lupus, for like, I'm like, you need to see a rheumatologist. You need I've been, and no one like can find anything. And the second you said that, I'm like, I've never even heard of that. Yeah. And I just texted it to my mom, like while we were recording this
I think it was,
never heard of that.
It was called urticaria is like what I was struggling with, I believe. And I did grow out of it, but it's so interesting because, at the time there really wasn't anything in terms of diagnosing. There was nothing like it was like, okay, take some Benadryl, here you go, live with it or stay out of the sun. And that was pretty much it. Fortunately for me, I came out of it, but I feel like I've always struggled like low key with some sort of like autoimmune-ish issues. And it's interesting because I think this is just something that, like you say, like I'll always go to a doctor and, things will be completely normal. My labs look great. Like, maybe my thyroid, like my hormones are a little tiny bit off, but not enough to be feeling the way I do. But this is such an interesting talk. Like, for people who are in this state, like, where do you start? If you're someone that
love
is,
this.
Yeah. Where do you even start?
First of all, you said the most important word that you said there is ish. You said, I'm autoimmune-ish.
Right.
And this is the problem because you're not, if you were true autoimmune, you'd go to a rheumatologist, they would draw some labs on you, everything would come back red, and you'd be like, oh, you have lupus. Great. Diagnosis. Awesome. But you're ish and there's no room for ish. Okay.
Right.
So from everything you said, I wrote it down actually. So,
I love this.
So this is the problem. And this goes back to the controversial thing that I said, or the unpopular opinion. So let's look at this. Most of my patients that come into me are older. There's a reason for that. It's not because they're old. It's because they've been cooking a disease for so long. And by the time they're 15, 60, the wheels are falling off the bus. But where you are now is in the beginning stage of that spectrum where it's ish. Let's talk about diabetes because that's something people are really familiar with, and we'll use that as a metaphor. So if you're diabetic at age 55, your A1C, for those of you who don't know, that measures blood sugar, is like whatever, it's 8. You didn't get that diabetes at age 55, right? You were probably pre-diabetic around 45. You were probably insulin resistant at around 35. And we have tests for that. The A1C was like creeping up. So you have this pre-diabetes, but there's no test for pre-autoimmunity. So these patients will walk around for years feeling like shit, and the regular blood work will not find it. The autoimmune blood work, you go to a rheumatologist, maybe you'll have like an ANA, maybe nothing. And they'll say to you, nothing's wrong, check again a year from now or 2 years from now. Now they're not wrong and they're not evil, and I don't want you to hate your doctors. They just have a very particular set of tools. And those tools say, if this, then this. if you have this, then you have this. And if you don't have this lab, if you don't meet the criteria, if you don't follow the guidelines, you are ish. And there's nothing we could do for you for ish. So where functional medicine is different, it's different in two ways. One, if you already have a thing, we want to find out the root cause of that thing, right? If you already have psoriasis, we want to find out that maybe it's gluten in your life, right? We want to find the root cause. But the other is the understanding that the symptoms mean something. And if the patient has symptoms, I may not be able to treat it with medicine because it's not a disease, but I could start tracking it and modifying life. So for example, my patients come in and we have the software for symptoms. So I can have an objective baseline. When you started, maybe all your symptoms were altogether were like an 88. You had a 4 in headache, a 3 in your stomach, a 2, and we added up to 88. And every time we meet, we're going to ask you about those symptoms again so we could track if things are getting better or worse. So we use the symptoms, since we can't use labs because you're ish, there's nothing wrong with you. We use the symptoms to see if our interventions are working. So it's the understanding that the symptoms are telling you that you're in a pre-disease state and it should not be ignored. And you're not crazy. And as the reason why the name of my book is, it's not in your head. And this is especially true for women because it is so easy to dismiss us.
Oh my God, absolutely. I want to actually, maybe going along this lines, to break this down as well. And I think a lot of women nowadays I feel like we're seeing more and more of it. I don't know what the statistics are, but PCOS, along those lines. What are you seeing? And, for maybe someone who is either struggling through that or potentially knows someone, like, can you give us a little breakdown of that? Because I feel like that's kind of along the lines of.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. It's another unpopular opinion that I have, but it's actually a fact.
Keep them coming.
Yes, please.
It's actually, okay. PCOS, for those of you who may not know, it stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome, which would make you feel like, well, are my ovaries full of cysts? Well, no. So there's a spectrum of PCOS, and it's a younger woman, usually not under 20s, but sometimes in your teens, during the time of potential fertility is the age group for PCOS. And she will have irregular periods. She is often slightly overweight to obese. And these are not my categories. These are just words I used, and they have no judgment behind them. These are just BMI codes. Although there are people who don't fit that, she may have elevated testosterone, which will cause her hair in unwanted places. And then at the severe level of it, she will also have cysts in her ovaries. So it's not exactly a disease in the sense of like COVID, yes, no. It's a constellation of symptoms that we've created like an umbrella name called for PCOS. And here's what's really annoying about PCOS is that they're not telling these girls the truth. My patients will come in and they'll say, I just went to my GYN. Oh my God, I have PCOS. And they gave me medicine. And usually that medicine is metformin. Ladies, what is metformin for?
Diabetes and
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It's for diabetes, right? So,
okay. I was like,
but there's no conversation. They think like, oh, PCOS, oh, metformin, this must be a PCOS medication. There's something wrong with me. I have a thing called PCOS. Oh my God, I'm going to always have fertility issues. I have to take this medication, right? It's like this diagnosis that makes you feel like something's wrong with your girl parts, right? Yeah. Maybe I won't have kids. Maybe my period's always going to be off. And it's a lot. But what they never tell them is that PCOS is actually a carb issue. It's an insulin sensitivity issue. It's actually a pre-diabetes. I'm going to explain to you what that is. Now, if you tell these women, by the way, if you just change what you eat and increase your insulin sensitivity, this will go away. And the reason I know that is because we're giving you this medication called metformin, which is basically promoting insulin sensitivity. So I'm going to pause here for a moment before I explain all that and just see if you have questions, and I'll explain everything I just said again in more.
I guess I'm just curious sorry. I'm just curious as to why we've gotten to the place, like, why has the medical field gotten so far away from getting to that, right? Like, is it because we're pushing metformin? Is it because we have a hard time explaining or maybe diving into these chronic diseases? Like, in your experience, like, do you think just the medical field in general, we're having a hard time saying the truth? Like, are we having a hard time really getting to something that's a hard conversation to have?
No. So I don't think, right, because to say that they're not saying the truth, there'd be malice. To say that they're pushing pill is also malice. There's no malice because I've practiced primary care medicine for a really long time before I transitioned. So I can authentically tell you, pharmaceuticals were not writing me checks, and I had my patients' best interest in mind. And so I know my colleagues are in the same way. We don't profit from pharma. No one's writing us checks. They're not even allowed to buy us coffee, just so you know. It's like, it's not like that. Maybe it was in the 80s. That's no longer a thing. So,
I'm glad we're myth busting because this is like part of it. You know, we need to understand these dynamics, you know.
Yeah, like even when we have like NP meetings and they have dinner, like they want to buy us dinner, it's like so like how much are allowed to spend on the dinners. It's like it's really, really regulated. There is no more prescribe our stuff. Here's a golf trip. That died a long time ago. Thank goodness for that. So there is no malice on the part of your doctors who are telling you PCOS, here's metformin. I think there is a true lack of understanding of nutrition. And I'm going to explain how this is all connected nutritionally, but there's the industry itself. Like in my functional medicine practice, my integrative medicine, I spend an hour with my patient because I can, because the patient is paying for their time, and it's like concierge medicine. In my primary care practice, in order to keep the lights on, I have to see 8 patients an hour, which is insanity.
Yeah,
but I
insane.
have to. Not because I'm a bad provider, because that's how insurance is reimbursed, and I will not be able to pay my staff. Not making millions in my primary care, keeping the lights on and paying my staff. So it is a volume-driven business, and all these doctors are in it. They have to do this in order to survive. So there's no way I can have a conversation with you about prevention, lifestyle. What are you eating? Are you eating fast food? What could we change? Like, there's no room for any of that. Okay. So that's on the provider side. But we also have to talk about the patient side, because you may not be the typical patient. The patients that show up to me in my integrative practice are not the typical patient. The typical patient is very happy with a diagnosis and medication.
Got it.
Not every patient is ready to make the lifestyle changes. They don't want to know. They don't want to give up barbecue. They don't want to give up McDonald's. The typical patient is fine with this. Oh, I have hypertension. Let me take my medication. Hey, if you lost 20 pounds, you won't need that. No, I can't. It's too hard for me. So there is a provider side to it, but there's also a patient side to it. And a lot of patients, right? There's a reason why fast food is so popular. People are happy there.
Yeah.
So not everyone is ready to make the change. Not everyone can make the change. Not everyone wants that information. Not everyone can process that information. So there's so many parts to it, but I think the most important part is for everyone to know that there's no malice. Because you would have to pretty much say that everyone who graduates med school at NP suddenly becomes this malicious, pharma-driven robot.
Right. Yeah, and I think that seems to be the rhetoric that we're hearing. It's tough because, Sam and I have had a lot of discussions in terms of like medical field, and I think almost everybody on here that we hear from, I'll say everybody that comes on here, we all are in this because, one, we love it. We want to help people. We have a true love for either science and or, really bettering our patients. And for some reason, that message is very strong in the media. And I think obviously since, the pandemic and things like that, obviously we're opening up the curtain, and we should be, really pulling it back and having these hard conversations. But I think the idea, and I love that you're speaking to this, because I think it's important for people to know, like, I don't think it's really doctors wanting to, shove all these things down your throat for a pill. And that seems to be the rhetoric that I'm hearing. A lot of people are saying, well, doctors just want, or NPs are, really just driven by money. And I think this is a really important conversation to be having.
Well, no, I feel like we all go into this career because we have a genuine interest in wanting to help people and to promote health. But then the healthcare system that we're operating under is not actually there to promote people's health or make people live good, fulfilling lives. So we go into it with one intentions, and then we're stuck under a system that prevents us from doing the job that we went to school to do. It's like so 100%. Frustrating.
It is a systemic issue. And if you guys are nurses, if tomorrow you became NPs, you're not suddenly become this malicious right? What's going to happen is this: you're going to learn evidence-based practice, and they're going to say to you, hey, when someone has diabetes or someone has PCOS, give them metformin. Now, here's the thing. You're going to get metformin because you're also going to learn why metformin works, right? It's going to say it's here and then it goes to the kidney, and right? You're going to learn all that. But the other side of it is if you don't give it, you can get sued, right? So we also have a litigious society. So you're really stuck. Once you're in the system, you are stuck in the system. You have to follow the guidelines because that is, and there's science behind it. It's not made up, right? These medications work. You take a blood pressure medicine, it brings your blood pressure down, right? So there's science behind it. And if you don't do it because you're like, hey, you know what? Yeah, go home and just try it on your own. And that person has a heart attack, you're getting sued. So there's so many parts that constrict you. But everyone goes in to, no one spends this much time in school to hurt people.
Yeah. Right.
Like, how hard was nursing school?
It's not.
Like, how hard was nursing school?
For me.
Right? Like, nursing school
for you, it was probably much
like,
easier. But yeah.
Like, it was not easy. And NP school isn't easy either. So, like, no one's doing this to, like, yeah, let me do this. I can just, like, torture people. Like, no.
Well, and then it's sad because actually, like, my dad and I do not agree on a lot of anything to do with politics or healthcare or anything. But anyways, during the pandemic, he would love to make comments about big pharma this and hospitals just want your money and doctors this. I'm like, and I was working at a children's hospital at the time. You know what? I went to nursing school because actually he told me, like when he got COVID himself and was using a bullshit concierge doctor. I'm going to get high blood pressure right now. But we were arguing, obviously. And he told me that, if don't go to hospitals, they'll kill you. I'm like, you know what? I went to nursing school and said, I want to be a NICU nurse so I can kill babies. That's the whole reason. I was like, you got it. I was like, that's it. I want to go. And I feel like now the pandemic and just the fact that it happened during election time and got so politicized, I feel like there's such a large group in this country that has very much politicized healthcare and that has this distrust for the government and distrust for doctors and thinks that we're all just trying to like get money. I'm like, yeah, and believe that like we get kickbacks. I'm like, that doesn't exist. Like Sunshine Act, baby. There are no kickbacks anymore.
Thank you.
Like that does not happen. Like it's not maybe back in the day, but like things have tightened up. Like now that I work in med device sales, everyone's like, oh, do you take clients out to dinner all the time? I'm like, I have worked here for 8 months and I have never taken one client out to dinner. I've literally brought in coffee from Starbucks.
Yeah. And you have to make everybody sign for the coffee.
Well, no, I have to get their license number to report it to my company that I bought coffee for this class that I taught. And it's like, and then sometimes people even request like, oh, you're teaching this class. Can you come, can you sponsor lunch? I'm like, honestly, I can't. Like, I literally don't even have that budget. Like it's not that way. And I'm like, that is such a, like that mindset. I hate it because people thinking like, I'm like, where's your kickbacks? Like you're not getting a kickback.
So you know what?
Exist.
Everything you said is so spot on. So before COVID got politicized, let me just take us a stroll back to March 2020, before I got politicized. Everyone in my neighborhood closed down. Every single office closed down. And I turned to my team and I said, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to go home and collect unemployment, which you can, or do you want to stay open? I don't know what the fuck is coming our way. Yeah. And everyone with the exception of one severely asthmatic person said, we're in. So when everyone else was fucking closed, we stayed open. We didn't know what the fuck we were doing. We didn't even have, we didn't have PPEs. Dentists were like dropping. So we had like this fucking paper shit and the paper shit here, like, taking care of everybody. We were taking care of, we didn't know what COVID was. There was hardly swabs, right? This is pre. We didn't have swabs. We didn't know what to do. I was seeing patients in their car because it was so scary. And, just kind of triaging who needs to go to the ER, we can manage. And every day, whatever swabs we would get from the community, because it's the same swabs that the GYNs use. So the reps would like say, hey, I got you 20 swabs. That's how many I could test for the day. So my team and I did that for months, not knowing at that point what we were doing to our families, what we were bringing home. Like, you just did it.
Right.
Yeah. Nobody was getting money. No, there was nothing, right? It was pre-politics. Everyone was scared. Everyone was home. And then half the world decided it was a hoax. The other half didn't believe the hoax. And then all of a sudden, like, it all went to shit. But that right there, what we did for those months, that is what we went into medicine for. Mm-hmm. We didn't know. And I paid everyone their salary. We hardly had any patients, but that's what we went in for. We went in for to be there, to stay open and to do the thing. And I'm not judging people who didn't. Everyone has their own stuff at home, who's immunocompromised, who has issues. I'm not judging people, but that is why we went into medicine. We didn't get kickbacks, and I'm not getting kickbacks now.
No, totally. Right. Well, I actually want to go back
check?
to this. I would actually, where's my check? Where's my bonus?
Like, I've been on vacation in how long? Like,
okay, so this is my thought. What's really interesting is I actually think now there are a lot more of us out there looking for the efforts of the world. Mm-hmm. I think that there is a huge push in understanding the core. And I will say, you know, of course, there's a segment of the population that's just not interested in that. And I would agree with you. Sure. But I think there's a large majority of us out there. We're really looking to understand our bodies better, to really start finding all of these answers and these solutions. How did you develop your method? Because I think it's really interesting. The new method is really interesting. How did you start developing this? And let's go back to that moment.
And I love the name.
I do too.
I just have to give you props.
Yeah, great name.
Great name.
Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate that. Okay, how did I develop it? I developed it over time when I started realizing. So I always do the basics because you need to know how somebody's like a CBC, CMP, which is like their anemia, their kidneys, liver. So you got to do the basics because you don't know when the last time they had that. You want to rule out disease. And then what I started saying is like, what's happening in the peripheries that I really want to see that will tell me if the patient's ish. And then I think you mentioned it earlier, CRP is one of those. So CRP is a test which tells you if you have inflammation in your body. It's a very non-specific test. It doesn't tell you where the inflammation is or what's causing it, but it means there's inflammation. Now, conventional medicine does not usually run it unless they're doing it for some cardiac issues, but it doesn't usually run it.
I force my doctor to do it, and they're always like,
yes.
And I'm like,
and the reason they don't run it is because if it's high, the patient's going to say, well, what should I do? And conventional medicine will say, nothing, right? And they're not wrong because there's no medication for it. So it's a test that ends up creating this dialogue with the patient in conventional medicine that's not going anywhere. So, and now CRP is non-specific. It could also go up like after exercise and then come back down. So CRP, if it's sustained and it's high, it means there's inflammation in your body all the time. And inflammation causes disease, right? So if we have this inflammation, we're going to feel ish, and then eventually we have disease. So these are the type of things I look for on the side. So I do blood work. I try to find inflammatory markers. I also do genetic markers on everyone. I want to see, do you have the predisposition to Alzheimer's? Because if you do, then there's no room to fuck around. We got to do this right now. We got to do it tomorrow. Because Alzheimer's is not, just because it's in your gene doesn't mean you have to get it. It's like it's called type 3 diabetes. So the same lifestyle that might get you type 2 diabetes is the same lifestyle that can get you Alzheimer's. So if you are not eating on point and there's other things, you have PCOS or other things going on, we need to double down because we don't want to turn that gene on. I like to do a gene called MTHFR. I want to see if they're doing something called methylating, which basically means do I need to give you certain B vitamins? So I'm looking for all these things to see like kind of what's cooking, what's making you feel ish. And then I also do a saliva test for something called adrenal fatigue. I can go into what that means if you want. Oh,
yes, please go into that,
okay.
please.
I only know about it from my own research, but I would love to hear it from someone who
absolutely
is qualified to speak on it. Because that's like,
So I do the blood work. I do the saliva for adrenal fatigue. And then I have the software that I use. I did not invent it, but I use it in a certain way. And to capture the patient's entire story and to create that tracking system that I advise you. Then I bring the patient back in. We go everything line by line. And I say, hey, this is why you feel this way. This is cooking here. This is cooking here. This was what might happen to you. And we need to get on it. And then they can make a decision. Some people just like that. It's called a discovery session. Some people just like to hear what's going on. And they're like, thank you so much. And we give them a cool folder and they go on the merry way. And some people say, hey, great. Now help me fix it. And then we work together for a year. And I insist on working for a year together because nothing happens in 30, 60, 90 days. That's bullshit. Yes. Switching gears now to adrenal. So that's the new method. That's the whole thing. That's how you get it. And if you were thinking about it, you want me to say it again, I'm just going to put this in here. If you go on any of the platforms for the new method, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, we offer free consults. And when I say free consults, it's really free. And there's no pressure. There's no sales. No,
I know.
it's
Okay.
nationally.
Oh, nice. Okay.
That's good.
And it will explain.
When do we fuck
No,
with
like
you?
Tori, like literally look at my
We're
text
literally-
messages to my mom right now, and I just sent her your YouTube video about what causes autoimmune disease, and I'm like, this is
Oh, my YouTube video?
I want you to see her.
Yeah,
I'm like literally
Okay.
like I'm gonna talk to you after.
Oh my
this
God,
about
you're
my
so
mom.
cute. I have a
No.
lot of patients in California. A lot.
Okay, well, I'm like my mom. Once we're done
Awesome.
with
So
this, I will talk to you, but I'm gonna get her set up with you because
Okay.
she actually was diagnosed with the PLME. But she
Okay.
thinks there's more. But
So,
I
okay,
sent
so
her
my
to a
wife's PMLE is
rheumatologist.
gone.
Her labs were like, that's what I just told her. I'm like, you have to see her because like we can't even go outside with you. Like you, can't
No, it's a
even,
big deal.
like,
We lived that way for a long time.
and we live in Southern California.
Yeah,
But
it's
okay,
crazy.
We'll talk after. But like
no problem.
Like she has to come see you. I'm like so.
I mean, I
excited
have
about
to
this
say,
episode.
just like to get mushy for a moment, I'm always thankful for my wife's PMLE because she got diagnosed with PMLE before she met me. And she was a Division I softball coach, obviously, because she's gay. She plays softball. So, and that was a gay joke. I'm gay. I could say it. Everybody who's offended, I'm sorry.
Love you for
And
no one's offended. Trust me.
Okay, good. So, but because of the PMLE, she had to switch careers and go into medicine. And I met her in the ER. So I am thankful for it, even though we cured it. So anyway.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing is you cured it, which is awesome because
Yeah.
my mom has felt like hopeless for the last 2 years of just like
No,
I can't
does
go
not
in
have
the
to feel
sun,
hopeless.
and I'm like, okay, I'm like literally like frantically
Not only
texting
should
her,
you
like
not feel
so
hopeless-
excited.
Oh, good. I'm so happy.
You.
So,
Okay, so
I'm going to
sorry.
get to adrenal fatigue, but just so you know, it's all right. I stay focused. Is that with PMLE, since she didn't actually address the inflammation, she might get something else. So it's really important that we get it.
Okay, so then you were talking about Alzheimer's, and I was texting her because my grandpa, her dad, had Alzheimer's and passed away. And
I'm so sorry.
I literally, oh, thank you. Like, but I just texted her and I was like, I'm like, she's also saying Alzheimer's can be genetic, and preventable.
Tell her to
I'm
binge my videos on YouTube.
I'm like,
And,
I just sent her your YouTube channel. I'm like, I like want you to see her, and she said okay because
I
I
would
think
be
the
happy to.
Alzheimer thing being her dad scares her, and he was diabetic.
It's terrifying.
And so I'm like, but this is all
we
genetic.
have to work on this yesterday.
I know. So the fact that like I don't know, I feel so excited that we're having you here because I'm like, this could be like so huge for my family because like, especially like we have grandchildren now in the family, and I'm like, I want you to be around here for a long, long time, but it's so hard.
We
like,
have
all the
to
doctors have given her nothing. They're like, your labs are normal. She finally, I got her to go to a rheumatologist. They said labs are normal. That's it. That's all. Yeah. And she's just
PMLE is what's called like it's like diagnosis of exclusion, meaning everything else is negative. So we're going to say it's this, which is why everything's coming up negative. There's no test for it.
And they haven't told her that there's anything other than like stay out of the sun, antihistamine, and like, so I don't know. I won't keep hogging this interview. We'll talk after, but I'm gonna
perfect. I'm excited.
But that was my
Tell
question.
her to,
Was
this way, like she doesn't. She could do like the free consult. My team can explain to her what it is, and then she can get comfortable. Meanwhile, she'll learn. Go on YouTube, go on Facebook because that's the platform more for her age. Facebook for you.
Yeah, she's on Facebook.
So let her go there and get comfortable with who I am, and I'm saying this to everyone who's listening: go get comfortable with who I am because you just met me 3 seconds ago. I put out so much content so that you can get comfortable with all of it. So now back to adrenal fatigue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So your adrenals are these glands. They sit on top of your kidneys and they produce something called cortisol. By the way, side note, adrenal fatigue is not recognized in conventional medicine.
Yes,
So when you go to your endocrinologist
thank you,
and you say I have adrenal fatigue, he'll be like, there's no such thing. Good for you.
Yes,
Awesome.
I've heard that. They all say that.
Okay.
They all say that.
Okay, they'll say that. Because here's the thing. In conventional medicine, either your adrenals are working too high, ICU, they're too low, you're in the ICU, and there's nothing in the middle, which obviously makes no sense. Okay. And we could test for it and measure it. It's trackable. It's not an opinion. So we do a saliva testing. So let me explain the saliva testing. So cortisol has a lot of jobs, but one of its main job is to wake you up in the morning. When you're sleeping, when the sunlight hits your eyes and then you kind of wake up knowing it's morning, that's because that sunlight hitting your eyes tells your brain to release cortisol. If everything's working well, the sunlight hits your eyes, you release cortisol, and you're like, oh, it's time for me to wake up. And you wake up happy and shiny, again, if this is working well. And throughout the day, you're feeling wonderful. And then you get appropriately tired throughout the day, and your cortisol starts to drop until it's at a level where you can go to sleep And then melatonin takes over. And that's a perfect cortisol curve. That's what we call a phase 0. We all aspire to be a phase 0. And then you'll have perfect energy levels. However, when life is stressful, or if you have a chronic issue or something's going on and you want to power through the day, cortisol is also your stress hormone. It's your get through the day hormone. So you go to the cortisol bank and you're like, hey, can you hook me up? I need some cortisol to get through the day. And cortisol, your adrenal's like, sure, here you go. Here's some cortisol. And then you get through the day. You power through it. Eventually, though, you have to pay the credit card bill because you keep using the credit card, because your adrenals will not be able to produce as much cortisol as you need. And that is called adrenal fatigue. There's a stage 1, a stage 2, a stage 3, 3 being the worst. And we measure that through saliva. So the patient will take saliva 4 times a day, morning, noon, before dinner time, and then right before bedtime. So we get this curve, and we can see how far they are away from that curve. So a phase 1 was kind of getting through the day. You know, some points are still in what I call in the green. They're getting through it. They're all right. A phase 2 is suboptimal. This person is kind of dragging all day, still has more energy in the morning, but not feeling like they should. A phase 3 is flatline. They're exhausted when they first wake up. They're exhausted all fucking day. They're exhausted at night. Here's what's crazy. If you have phase 3 adrenal fatigue and you go to exercise, you will be fucking exhausted after exercise. This is important because you take these women who may be struggling and they go to the conventional medicine doctor and he goes, well, you just need to exercise. And you're like, I can't exercise. I'm fucking exhausted. So now you're lazy. Now you have all this negative self-talk because, you know, Susie Sunshine feels great after she works out and you need to take a nap after you work out and you think something's wrong with you. And the reason you're exhausted is because you used the little bit of fumes that you have to get through the day to get through the CrossFit workout and you got nothing left for the day. So it's so important to find out if you have adrenal fatigue, because if I am dealing with somebody who's a phase 3 adrenal fatigue, I will not tell them to exercise. I will say, do not exercise until we get your energy levels up. And then the patient comes back to me 3-4 months later. It's like, guess what I did this month? I finally went back to the gym and I wasn't exhausted. They come and tell me. So it's really important to know because, oh my God, I feel so bad for women who are like, you know, sometimes they're partners who are well-meaning, like, come on, let's go to the gym. And they're like, I just
That's
can't.
Literally me and Jacob. I'm not kidding. We're definitely booking with you because I need to see you just for this. I'm like, what's interesting is, I mean, maybe I'm curious your thoughts on this, just in a general question. Why do you think that this concept or these, because to me, everything you're speaking of and the way you practice is truly remarkable. It's getting to the core of a lot of issues. It's being able to take time and invest in your patients. Why do you think Western practitioners see it as so taboo or maybe reject a lot of these ideas?
Well, it's first of all, it's not taught in school, right? And so then also when you say the word holistic, you conjure up, you know, like crystals. I'm not against crystals. But
yes,
you conjure up crystals, incense,
Woo-woo.
and sage, right?
Right.
Oh, that's what holistic means. And so for anyone who comes from a very science background, that seems like, well, that, and so they don't understand, I think, that there's different levels of what holistic means. It's an umbrella term. And the other part, as we said, is the systemic issue that there's no part of wellness. But the other part is that there are studies, but there are also some areas that have no studies. Like I'll give you an example. My patients who have eczema, anecdotally, meaning without any studies, I will tell my patients, stop drinking dairy. Stop giving your kids dairy for 30 days. If I'm wrong, big deal. I'm wrong. You didn't have it, right? No side effect.
Yeah.
But if I'm right, your eczema clears up. Time after time after time, the eczema clears up. Now, who is going to fund that study? It's not going to be the farm that's making cream. It's not going to be the dairy company. Who's funding the study of removal of milk helps, right? So a lot of the things that we're discovering, the functional medicine world, we don't have the ability to run the studies the way pharmaceutical does.
Right.
We don't have the ability.
Right, because there's no medication for you to prescribe.
There's no medication.
Right, that's great. Okay.
The R&D
doesn't mean the
this
results aren't there.
Right.
It's just
R&D
because,
in this country is run by pharma. They have the pockets to do it. And if you notice, and every study, let's just say do a study on Farxiga, which is a diabetes drug. They'll always say in one sentence, always start with lifestyle modification, skip. And then here's the thing for Farxiga. So they're aware that it's there, but they can't fund it. They can't fund it. So this becomes an issue of evidence-based practice. Well, what do? We don't have enough studies for it. So there is I would say risk, but not really risk, because if I'm just telling you to change your nutrition and take some supplements, and at no point am I telling you take an experimental drug, there's no risk, right? But it feels risky to people because it's like, red yeast rice, instead of a statin, but like, it feels risky, but it really isn't when it comes down to it. So I think there is, to your question, we don't learn it in school. We don't learn the connection between nutrition and PMLE, between nutrition and PCOS. So now I'm coming in telling you, if you stop eating your carbs, your period's going to normalize. That's crazy. We never learned it, right? And so you feel like you're really correct because you have all the science behind you. It's not wrong. It's just not the whole story. The system is designed to only treat sick. There was no time to consult patients to find out what's going on with them. I try. And then you have this, stigma around the word holistic. So I think all of that creates a world that doesn't allow it. And you have to opt out. Like when I first started this, I was nervous that some of my colleagues would think I'm bananas when I first started. Yeah. And I kind of hid it. I didn't have a lot of social media. I just did work with a few patients because I didn't want to be like, because I once mentioned in like a dermatology class, like, hey, what about milk? And they were like, absolutely not. There's no connection. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh,
so yeah, it's intense. It's intimidating. And then when it kept working, I was like, fuck it.
Yeah. You're like, I'm just going to say this. And I appreciate that. I mean, I'm telling you very, very, very genuinely, I really think there's a lot of us out there looking for providers like you. And I'm so glad that you are, because truly, as you said, like this is all kind of putting a lot of big things together. We're all learning. And I think this is just, personally, I feel like this is offering resources and, really invaluable insight to a lot of us. I'm really curious about this because this is sort of like maybe just a general question, like your thoughts on supplements. Like, what are you seeing in your patients in terms of lacking or needing? And then are there certain ones that you recommend, you don't recommend? Like, let's navigate that a little bit.
Yeah. It's a great question. One of the mistakes I think people make with supplements is they take the mentality from conventional medicine where there is a magic pill for this disease and they think there's a magic supplement for this disease. Mm-hmm. So there is no magic on either side. So this is why, take this supplement. First of all, there is no one magic supplement for anything. And there's also not one right supplement regimen for everyone. There are, like what I do is, and I'll tell you which ones, I give most of my patients 3 top ones, and the rest is customized depending on what's going on. And each supplement is for a different reason, but first and foremost must be nutrition. If you're out here eating Pizza Hut, you could take all the pills in the world, ain't gonna help you.
Yeah.
Okay. So supplements are secondary. You cannot smoke a cigarette, eat the food, not move, not sleep, and then think the supplements are going to save you. You're just wasting your money. Yeah, so it's like
putting a Band-Aid on an infected wound, thinking that like, well, I covered it up. It's like, it's still infected under there. Yeah, exactly. You can die, bro.
Exactly right. So, and it's hard for me because when I first started, I did like vitamin infusions and people were coming and using it and it wasn't sitting right with me because I was like, please don't come in here and think this is going to cure you of anything. So now I really try to offer it to patients who are already working with me and everything else. And then the IV infusions is like a nice,
it's like a buffer,
cherry on top. It was like ethically not sitting well with me that people came in thinking it was going to do something. So supplements, everyone should be on a really quality multivitamin because even when your nutrition's on point, my nutrition I think is on point. I still take a multivitamin. Hard to get it in our foods. Vitamin D, especially for those in the Northeast or anywhere north, vitamin D is a huge problem. So take your vitamin D. And then 2 other things that I like for almost everyone is omega-3 because that is just like, I think of it like the Tin Man. That's the oil can. That's omega-3 everywhere.
Okay. I can tell when I take my fish oil, my knee like gets all crackly. Like, I feel like
fish oil. Yeah. And then lastly, that I recommend for almost everyone is NAC. NAC is something that becomes glutathione. Glutathione is like this magical antioxidant that your body creates, but it's great to have more of, especially if you're dealing with something chronic. So that's the baseline. And then depending, like if someone is insulin resistant, I'll give them something that helps more with glucose metabolism. If someone has PCOS, you want to give them something called inositol, which helps them become more insulin sensitive and really helps like regulate the period. So really depending on what else is going on with the patient. I don't go for probiotics right away. I love probiotics, but I first heal the gut, then give probiotics, because if you give probiotics too soon, you can actually make things worse. I know that's very popular. And then like the sky's the limit. Depending on what the patient, like the patient wants to take a lot, great. I could really, but I feel like most patients don't want 4,000 supplements.
Right.
So try to make it really purposeful.
Right. Do you recommend, like, how do you vet your supplements? Do you have certain ones that you really like? What are you liking right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I use pretty much 2 lines. One is called Apex Energetics, and that only providers can get it. I have no financial affiliation with them. And I have sat through so many of their lecture series. They have functional medicine providers who practice, who create the formulas.
I love
so
that.
it's like they're using it, and it's great stuff. And then I also like Pure, which I think you can get online.
Okay.
And they're really quality. Those are the 2 that I use the most. Unless I can't find something, then I'll venture out.
What are your thoughts on wearables?
What's a wearable?
Like
what's a wearable?
Like like Apple Watch, and then like a lot of people are starting to do those glucose monitors, like the constant ones. Like those are becoming pretty trendy.
I think sometimes what's the goal? I guess what's the goal for some people? Like if you are not diabetic, I'm not really sure what you're doing with this information besides making yourself crazy.
Yeah.
So I guess that would, like, if you're diabetic, I can understand it or close to it. I'm not sure where you're going to get that information, because how are you you want this information so you can modify, right? If my cholesterol is high, I want to modify my diet. Like, so your glucose is going to keep going up all day. So what are you doing that's different? Hopefully you're trying to live a lifestyle that's keeping you everything at bay. The one thing I do love to monitor is oxygen levels when you're sleeping, because a lot of people have sleep apnea and they don't know it. If you can get tested, please do. Your insurance will cover it. You don't have to be heavy to have sleep apnea. That's another myth. I mean, yes, heavy people tend to have it more, but there are plenty of thin people with polyps and things like that and sleep apnea. And if you are not getting oxygenated at night, you're going to have a lot of issues, especially brain fog. So that's one thing I would love to measure on everyone, because some people have no idea how bad their oxygen level dips. But other than that, personally, not a huge proponent of it. And honestly, even with my diabetics, unless they're on insulin, I'm like, don't get the glucometer. It's just going to make you crazy.
The other question I really wanted to touch on really quick is, so a lot of the things like you mentioned, waking up and having sun on your eyes, and for those of us really trying to optimize our life, but a lot of us live on night shift. Do you have any suggestions for the night shifters out there of how to optimize your life when you are not in optimal situations or living an optimal lifestyle?
Hard.
Yeah.
This is hard. My daughter is night shift, ER nurse.
We kindred spirits. How do we navigate all this? Or like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. How do you keep her going?
She doesn't listen to me. So do you know how it is?
Yeah, totally.
You don't listen to your mom.
Yeah.
We're best friends, but she doesn't listen to me. So, okay. This is a hard one, because really, ideally, as soon as you can, get out of night shift. As soon as you can, because I will tell you how to optimize really night shift, but you are truly going against how you're built. And while you will get used to it, your body's actually not changing. Okay, so you're always going to be swimming uphill. You're gonna adapt, because people adapt. You're gonna use your cortisol levels when you need to. You're gonna you're going to do what you got to do, and you're going to feel like you got this. But the system is designed to work with night and day. It's just designed that way, and you can't reprogram it. So while you are doing what you have to do, eventually it will catch up somewhere. So whenever possible, whenever it becomes realistic in your life, whenever your seniority comes up, switch. I mean, I hate to say it, but switch. And I've written notes
we appreciate
to people
the
who
honesty.
couldn't.
We need it. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I've written notes to people who like couldn't because they're already sick. Like they have diabetes, they have this. And I'm like, I will not be able to regulate you until we get you sleeping through the night. And then you guys also don't sleep 7 to 9 hours. You guys 100%. Just don't sleep.
I will literally sleep like now 3 hours. I'll, wake up at 11 a.m., be up all 24 hours, and then maybe get 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and then go back in again. Like a lot of us are living this really unhealthy lifestyle.
And your
it's really unhealthy.
Is absolutely fucked.
Oh yeah. And then my days off, I'm exhausted.
Exactly. I see my daughter, like my heart breaks for her. And she loves night shift, and there's like this vibe in night shift, and I get it.
We are
like,
fun.
I do.
Yeah. Unhinged.
Yeah, she said it's more fun, right? No admin around. Like I get it. I really do. I used to be an ER nurse, but I never did night shift. But I get it. Here's what you're missing when you're not sleeping, and then I will answer your question. When you're not sleeping optimally, there are certain things chemically that happen in your brain that only happens in a deep sleep. Growth hormone is released because as you get older, you don't release anymore, right? Because we're not growing. Growth hormone is repairing, restoring, only happens in deep sleep, prolonged sleep. And then you have this thing called the glymphatic draining system, which is basically like the garbage has to come out. So this is the most metabolically active organ. It creates a lot of waste, and you need to get it out. And that only happens with deep sleep. And there's other things that happen in sleep, but sleep is connected with longevity. Sleep is connected to Alzheimer's. Sleep, and there's no way to fake it. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's no way you can't sleep extra on the weekend. It's not happening. So it's a big deal. But then there's the reality, right? And some people are never going up night shift, and then they have kids at home. Like then there's the reality. I gotta eat, very nice, but I need to work night shift. So if when I talk to my patients, I talk about nutrition, I talk about sleep, I talk about exercise, I talk about stress, right? And then we're talking about medication and supplements. So if I can't manage the sleep component, let's make sure that our diet is on point, right? Because when we're sick, it's multifactorial. So right now I can't manage sleep. That's not what's happening in my life right now, E. So then, okay, so let's fix your nutrition. Let's make sure that's on point. Let's just make sure we're moving right. Your supplements are on point. You're not dealing with some crazy stress. Like even though you're a night shift, maybe you don't need to work somewhere with like an asshole boss. We don't need that extra stress.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't need to be in a toxic relationship. Remove that extra stress. So we're going to try to modify all the other pieces, because then you're just bringing it down to one issue.
Okay. I love that.
And that's the best that we can do until things change. Because that's the reality. The reality is that everyone's going to have something they can't do. Not everybody can have kale every day, right? Some people are just like out and about and can't even do the nutrition that I want. So I'm like, all right, let's optimize the other parts. So we do the best that we can. And that's it.
Mm-hmm. This may be a repetitive question, but I am really curious about this. As the root of our issues largely being inflammation, what are some like big no-nos or things that you're like, or things that we absolutely should be doing, or things we should absolutely not be doing?
Or what's actually like causing this inflammation?
Yes.
Okay. So it depends, right? So this is why when somebody comes inflamed and sick, we peel it off in layers. And I may be redundant in that I am saying like, we always start with nutrition, right? So this is how the reason I wrote my book called It's Not in Your Head is because like when you don't feel good, you're just like spending money on all these tests. Should I do lead testing? Should I do hormone testing? Should I do mold testing? So you go in order. The most toxic thing for most people is the food that they eat. So if I tell you every day, just eat a teaspoonful of poison, you're like, no way, I'm not going to do that. Why? You're going to be fine today. But 20 years from now, something weird is going to happen, right? So every day since the day you're born, you're eating some form of poison. And that is the biggest toxin. Every meal, 3 times a meal, processed food, high fructose corn syrup, And I know it's hard, and especially in your age group, which is why most of my patients are not in your age group, because it's really hard to live a social life and just be like, I'll have the kale salad, right? Like I get it's a hard reality, but so nutrition, we do the best we can because it's this constant toxins and the pesticides. So even when you're trying to make a salad, if it's not organic, it's full of pesticides. So you're trying your best. I just want to say this before I move on to the next part. They did a study on newborn babies. This will speak to you, my NICU girl. Right? You said you're in NICU?
Yeah, both of us. NICU.
Oh, both of you. Okay. I didn't realize you're both in it. So cord blood. And this study was more than 10 years ago. 239 chemicals and toxins in a newborn baby's umbilical blood. And that was 10 years ago. So it's more now. So before we even started eating these babies, we are all filled with toxins. They took fat from like people who are getting liposuction and other reasons that fat was removed and saw what toxins are there. Astronomical. So your system is constantly in a state of trying to detox this shit. This is why I think there's a lot of neurological issues in kids these days, because not everyone can detox all this. We weren't designed to detox all this. So you're coming into the world, you're detoxing all this shit. Now we're eating Cheetos and Doritos or a hamburger. So that's more shit, right? So that's why I say you start with nutrition, because what?
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell. Yeah. That's not even like, what is it? That's not even food, right? So,
no.
And P.S., I say this with no judgment. When I was younger, I ate McDonald's 3 times a day. I fed my kids chicken nuggets. I did not know better. So I really speak from no judgment, because you learn this when you learn this, and you can do it when you can do it. And when I was a single mom, we were eating at McDonald's, and that was just that. So no judgment when I talk. So nutrition is first, because it's like this toxin that comes in every single meal. Then you want to heal your belly, because that's another source of inflammation. So because that nutrition like really messes the belly, and almost everything is created by the bacteria on your belly. The neurotransmitters for your brain, your hormones, everything is actually made in the belly. It's actually the factory for all of it. So you want to heal the belly. That's when you do the probiotics, something called short chain fatty acids. You want to fix that. 9 times out of 10, you optimize these 2 things. You probably don't need to do anything else after that. Start always in nutrition. It's an annoying topic. You don't want to do it, but that's really where it's at. Then if that didn't work, your diet's on point, you fixed your microbiome, you took your probiotics, that's when you start digging more. And then it depends a little bit on your symptoms. Like some people's symptoms are going to point more to like maybe there's a mold issue. Some people's symptoms are going to be like, maybe we should check you for a chronic issue like Lyme. Some people are going to be more hormonal. So, and some people might need food sensitivity testing, which is not the same as allergies. So the testing should come later after the nutritional portion, because let's just say we discover a mold or heavy metal and you want to detox or chelate from it. You're going to need to be the strongest host possible, strong nutrition, your belly's on point, to be able to even manage this detox. So no matter what, you want to start here, get strong, see if most of these symptoms go away before you go into this crazy world of testing. I probably only have to do the crazy testing for maybe 10% of my patients. Most of the time it's right here, which is good, because that means you don't really need a lot of people's help to get it.
It's interesting. I love that. You mentioned allergies. I don't know if you can touch on this, but, obviously we're seeing allergies in kids earlier and earlier. For someone who's experiencing like even environmental allergies or just like food allergies in general, what are your thoughts on that?
Allergies is the system on overload. And I have allergies. I have not been able to cure my allergies. So full disclosure there, it's not like I figured that piece out, but it is, your body is now reacting to things it's not supposed to. You're not supposed to be reacting to grass. You're not supposed to be reacting to a peach. You're just not supposed to be reacting to it. Like, you're supposed to be able to eat it. It's your body's it's dealing, your cup is so full of whatever is trying to detox that you're eating a peach and it's like, nope, we can't handle this. It's just too foreign. Like, we just can't handle it. This is why I don't know a cure for it, other than to hopefully calm down the inflammation. So many of my patients will say that once they've calmed things down, especially dairy, a lot of the allergies get better. but it's not necessarily a cure for the allergy. It's just that we bring the cup halfway down. So it takes them a little longer to kind of fall over the edge. And for a lot of people, it's dairy. I had a woman who came in and said to me, I've been on Zyrtec for the past 10 years of my life. And since starting with you, I have not needed Zyrtec forever. Did I cure her allergies? No. But that I brought her inflammation down so she's not like this level 10 all the time.
Mm-hmm.
What are your best tips to the listeners to try to like reduce inflammation?
To try to what?
Reduce inflammation.
Reduce inflammation. Okay. The first tip I just want to tell every listener is that if you're feeling ish, you're not crazy. That's like my most important message. It's my tagline. I say the new method where we empower people to finally realize that their symptoms are not in their head. I need to say that to everyone listening, because especially women, we just get dismissed. You're anxious, you're nervous, you Google too much. Okay. So it's not in your head. Keep hunting. So what are the tips? I love intermittent fasting for everyone. This is not a diet weight loss conversation at all. This is an anti-inflammatory conversation. I don't know how deep you want me to get into this, but intermittent fasting results in ketosis, which is not keto. It doesn't mean eat a lot of bacon. That's not what that means. And it will calm down your inflammation almost automatically. I've been intermittent fasting now for like 5 years. I do like 20 hours of fasting. You don't have to do 20 hours. I'm just saying.
What
you can go on my YouTube. I do a whole talk about it.
Yeah, if you were to start, like how would you, it's a good idea.
Intermittent fasting. Let me give you a guide to intermittent fasting. I actually give this guide also on YouTube. So what I like for women is somewhere between 14 to 16 hours of fasting. But remember, this includes your sleep time. So I'll talk to the daytime people and then we're going to reverse it for you guys. For a daytime person, they will have breakfast somewhere around 11 o'clock. They will finish their last meal at 7, and then they don't eat again from 7 p.m. until the next day at 11. That's 16-8. And half the time you spent sleeping, so it's really not outrageous. That's a 16-8 fasting. Now, when I first started 16-8, it was impossible for me to do 16-8 because I used to be the person who woke up and ate immediately before I worked out. The thought of working out on an empty stomach was impossible. So you start slow. I started 9 hours. I started 10 hours. You don't want to get to a point where you're fainting. What happens, I don't want to give you too much information. I'm sorry. I get excited about that. Here's how it works so you can understand why it takes some time. If you are someone that every single time you skip a meal or you go on too long, you're like shaky, you're hangry, you feel hypoglycemic, you're not efficient. That's like a car that needs to be filled up every block. It's not an efficient car, okay? So what you want is a car that can go for a really long time, sometimes gets refueled, sometimes doesn't. That's what we call metabolic flexibility. So we are designed by God or the universe, whatever you believe, to have this really cool feature that if we don't get fed, we will go internally to our fat stores. It will toggle on and burn fat and turn it into glucose, which is our fuel. So if you're metabolically flexible, sometimes you get a meal, great. Sometimes you skip a meal, no big deal. I'm not hangry because my body switches. You can only teach your body to switch if you fast because we never turn it on in modern society because we're the DoorDash. As soon as you're hungry, you eat. You never turn it on. So you have to teach your body slowly, hey, food's not coming. Turn this feature on. So initially it's hard. Initially, that first time you do it, you're like, holy shit, this is impossible. This is why you do it a little bit at a time. You do 9 hours at first, 10 hours at first. You don't want to get to this place of like super shakiness. You go slow. So you go slow until you're like, oh, wow, 9 hours is easy. And I'll push it to 10 because you're teaching your body slowly to start using these internal stores. And then one day you'll find that 16 hours is no big deal. And when I say no big deal, I don't mean getting to 16 hours like dying. No headache, no shakiness. You can work out. You're laser focused. That is metabolic flexibility. That means you really are using your internal stores for glucose. What happens in that time when you've turned that on, the byproduct of that is ketones. That's what the word ketosis comes from. When you're in ketosis, it is so anti-inflammatory. The body starts to clean up debris. Your brain is going to be focused. Like anyone who has brain fog, one of the first things you do is intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting, get it into your day somehow. at the very least, and then because even my patients who are maybe they're not nutritionally on point, but if I can get you to for 16 hours not put anything in your system, let it calm down, let it do its thing, and
coffee,
then eat.
no.
Yes, black coffee, no creamer.
Hell yeah.
Tea, water, seltzer, stay hydrated. Yes, black coffee all day. So you want to stay hydrated.
I've ever heard. I drink my black
That is a tip that almost everyone can use, because then some people will be like, okay, I'm not quite ready to diet. I hate that word. I'm not quite ready to change my nutrition. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite ready to do everything. But let's just start with the hours. Maybe I don't have to eat all the time. Maybe I can turn this on.
Okay.
That is, if you could get through that, we're 50% of the way there.
Okay. That's a good tip. I know this may be a very obvious question, but I have to ask it because a lot of us struggle with this anyway. What are your thoughts on alcohol, nicotine, all of the above? Like, how is, just maybe to get your thoughts on that.
Okay. So they're not good for you. There's no way for me to tell you that they're good for you. Okay.
Yeah.
That being said, it depends on your age. It depends on what you're dealing with, and it depends on your goals, right? So I'm not going to tell you that I never drink alcohol, but let me tell you why I say it depends on your age. Because when you're younger, you are detoxing faster. Alcohol is fucking you up. I mean, you drink, you're getting drunk. What does that mean? That's a form of neuroinflammation. We're fucking with your brain. If we can't detox that, your brain's going to feel a little, right? How do you feel the next day after you drink? You know, you're not optimal. You're not going to drink the night before your SAT or your NCLEX, right? Because you know that you're not going to operate optimally. So there is not just in the moment, it has a lasting effect. So now you drink 2, 3, 4 times a week. You're going to be suboptimal all the time. I'm not even getting to the sugar part. I'm just talking to the brain part. So if you're someone who is, so you're younger, you tend to detox earlier, but there's this cumulative effect because now you're suboptimal over time. Everything's over time. This is like, I feel ish. And part of feeling ish might also be the alcohol that you're having because you're suboptimal. When you're older, and if you're dealing with any kind of brain fog, post-COVID brain fog, any type of post-viral, there is no room for it. You don't have room to be suboptimal. You don't have room for any neuroinflammation, which is what alcohol is doing, right? So that's why I say it depends. Depends on your age, depends on what you're dealing with. So you could be 22, but dealing with COVID brain fog, there's no room for this. Why would you fuck with this? If you're older and dealing with cognitive decline, there's no room for your afternoon whiskey or whatever people in the afternoon drink, right? So we have no room for that. So that's on the cognitive neuroinflammatory part. But the other part is it's high carb. So the typical standard American diet, I'm going to have a bowl of pasta, a nice glass of wine. I'm fancy. I'm sophisticated. Your night is shot. You're not going to sleep well. You might have hot flashes and you think that it's your hormones. You're going to have nightmares because you're processing all that glucose at night. It's fucking with your sleep. So it has so many negative effects. Now, feels good, gives you a good time. So you use it sparingly. I can't imagine a world where I never drink alcohol. If you're one of those people, God bless you, you're awesome. You won at life. You really did.
Nor can I.
But,
so that's why I'm asking.
But you want to use it
sparingly.
You want to use it sparingly. You want to use it sparingly. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you're fasting, it counts in your time window. You can't be like, well, I finish eating at 7, but I'll have my vodka at 10. No, that still counts as eating. Right. So if you're going to partake and you want to intermittent fast, start your fast after your last drink, which, by the way, will be so much harder to fast the next day. Because the next day you wake up hungry.
If I'm hungover, I need In-N-Out to soak up.
Absolutely.
Science.
Yes, because you fell asleep with carb, huge carb overload. Oh. So when you wake up, you're starving.
I haven't just hungover in so long because even if I drink, I keep myself to like 2 max because I can't.
She's good.
Because you're growing up.
I'm too fucking old. I'm gonna be 37. Like
you have shit to do. You have shit to do. You can't do it.
Like, but a hangover in your 20s, you wake up and you're ready to roll. Like, I'm ready to date.
Exactly.
No,
because you could detox.
Now it's 5 days. Yeah. We are down. Like, it's not good.
That's exactly right.
Oh my gosh. Do you have any good life tips or something to leave our listeners with?
What's the words of wisdom like you tell your daughter when you say that she doesn't listen to you, but our selfie listens as well?
What do I tell? What do I tell my daughter? That's really good. Did you ever hear this like tale when they say like it depends on which wolf you feed? Did you ever hear this tale?
No.
So there's like, and I'm not saying it well. I'm sure other people are like, that's not how the story goes, but this is how the story goes to me. So someone says like you have the 2 wolves or 2 dogs, and let's just say, and whatever you're dealing with, let's just say one is courage and one is fear, or one is self-confidence and one is not, and one is like imposter syndrome versus confidence. And then you say which dog is going to get stronger, and then you say depending on which one I feed more, right? So we all have both sides of that. Right. So my daughter, she's growing in her career. She's an engineer and she's killing it. And there's days when she's like, I'm killing it. And there's days when she's like, I suck at life. I'm the worst engineer on the planet. Right. Don't we all have that? There's days when you're like, I'm the best nurse ever. I got this IV line in this baby. And there's days when you're like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. This other nurse has been here for 30 years is amazing. Right.
Yes.
So the conversation that you have with both of those sides is going to determine which one wins. So feed the wolf that has the positive thoughts. Feed that one that says, I fucking killed it. I got that line in that baby. That's the one you need to feed. That's the one you need to hone. That's the one you listen to the most. And the other one you try to starve, because they exist in all of us and you have to cultivate that one. Because if you keep going to this other one, it's so easy to go negative. Oh man, I really suck. Oh, that nurse is so much better. I missed that line. Oh, that baby didn't make it. And you go down that road, that's the one that's going to take over. So know that we're all faking it for whoever's listening. And the ones that are succeeding are the ones that are like talking to themselves positively and getting there. So that's my long-winded version of advice.
I love that.
You are amazing. Oh my God. This was
I wish you could read all my text messages.
No, literally. I'm sending it to my mom. I'm sure the listeners today are sending this out to every single one of their family members. We want to optimize our lives. And honestly, we're booking with you, both of us.
Honestly, I'm like afraid to know what my like cortisol.
I know, me too. But I know we need to do it.
No, don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. If you were really, don't be nervous.
We both have different things, but I feel like we both know we can improve a lot in different ways.
Yeah, the brain fog is real over here.
Yeah.
I lose
brain fog's big.
3,800 times a day. It's a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
a functional hot mess. And I'm like,
yes, but I think that's a lot of people, right? I think a lot of us are high functioning. We're high functioning, but we are all struggling. A lot of us are struggling in ways that we don't.
It's the ish. That was like honestly the best.
It's the ish.
It's
the ish. It's the ish.
Yeah. Okay. So for anyone who's struggling with the ish, where can they find you? Give us all the platforms.
Yeah, where can they hear free consults, the 15-minute
Okay. So I'll tell you. So it's the new method. And as you know by now, the new is spelled with a K, the new method on every platform except for Twitter, because I talk a lot. Twitter doesn't work for me. So too much to say. 150 characters, not my job. Yeah. So wherever platform you are, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, even Pinterest, TikTok is a really jam out in TikTok. Go there, get comfortable with me. Wherever you send me a message, the website, thenewmethod.com. My team, we read every message. We will find you. And then if you also go on the website or any of these platforms, there's always a link to the free consult. The free consult is basically, you're going to talk 15 minutes to my team. We're going to explain to you